Well, the Chiefs got embarrassed by the Broncos, there's no doubt about it, and in today's video, Andy Reid, Skyy Moore, and Travis Kelce all talk about the loss and how to best move forward. On top of that, the Chiefs made an underrated move before the trade deadline, though it wasn't actually a trade, and it also wasn't for a wide receiver like many wanted. And speaking of wide receivers, we need to talk about the lackluster season so far from second-year receiver in Skyy Moore. But first, how about those? First up, I gotta quickly mention some AFC West news because shortly after Halloween ended around 1 a.m., it was announced that Mark Davis, one of the worst owners in the league who hands down has the worst haircut I've ever seen, fired his general manager Dave Ziegler, offensive coordinator Mick Lombardi, as well as head coach Josh McDaniels. I can't even say his name without laughing. This is the second time, by the way, McDaniels has been let go before completing his second season as a head coach, with the first happening back in 2010 in Denver. And with that, the Raiders made quarterbacks coach Bo Hardigree their interim OC and their linebackers coach Antonio Pierce. He is now the interim head coach, and this marks the 8th different head coach since Mark Davis took over in 2011. On top of all of that, the Raiders are now expected to bench Jimmy Garoppolo, and their 4th-round pick, rookie QB Aiden O'Connell, is going to get a real shot as the starter. And when Ian Rappaport asked a source in the Raiders building why this was happening, they responded saying, quote, "He's our best quarterback," which is sort of savage, but worth noting the complete shakeup in Vegas, considering the Chiefs still have to play the Raiders twice this season. But enough of that dumpster fire, because we got to focus on the here and now as the Chiefs attempt to shake off this embarrassing Broncos loss and get ready for the Dolphins game in Germany. Andy Reid spoke to the media today and mentioned that 2 players didn't practice, and those were running back Jerick McKinnon, who has a sore groin. He's been dealing with that for a little while now, and linebacker Willie Gay, who is dealing with a low back contusion, though he is getting better. But when asked if he thinks Willie Gay could end up on IR, Andy said, "I don't think so. We'll see. I don't want to give you a yay or a nay right now, but he's making progress." Andy also said that Mahomes is doing better health-wise. The flu is gone, though I am concerned it could be spreading to others before they get to Germany, and his hand is healing up, noting it was mainly just some cuts and bruises, but nothing too crazy. Andy is excited for the trip to Germany, flying out there on Thursday with select media appearances such as Mahomes and I think others on Friday, and Andy noted they will have a regular Friday practice that day. They've done all they can to prepare in advance, sending people out to look at the field, hotels, etc., and are leaving later in the week because it's worked nicely in the past for Andy and his team. The Chiefs are 2-0 in international games under Andy Reid, for what that is worth, and he likes to have a more normal week of practice here at home before making the trip. It's also worth noting that the Dolphins left on Monday for Germany, so they've been there a few days longer, and we'll see if that indeed does pay off or not. Speaking of the Dolphins, Andy was asked about how he could potentially stop former Chiefs wide receiver Tyreek Hill, and Andy said, well, he's a great player, and while you might be able to slow him down, he's going to make plays somewhere regardless. Defensive end Charles Omenihu said that Miami's offense is big on rhythm, getting the ball out on time, and if you could throw that off, that gives chance for the defense to dictate how things are going to go. There's a lot of speed and window dressing, so a lot more outside runs and getting guys in open space is what they're going to be looking to do, so the Chiefs defense has got to be on the lookout for that. Linebacker Drew Tranquill mentioned that Tua has one of the quickest release times in the NFL, so the pass rush and coverage has to work well together and make it a one-dimensional game, basically meaning they got to get ahead, so Tua is forced to purely drop back and pass, and they'll have a better shot. Skyy Moore knows that cornerback Jalen Ramsey is back for the Dolphins and even had a pick in his return last week, so they got to be ready to battle it out with a great team on both sides of the ball. And from here, we got to talk about an important signing the Chiefs made, in my opinion, hours before the trade deadline ended. Wide receiver Richie James soon to return to the roster, as well as Skyy Moore and Travis Kelce both speaking about the tough loss in Denver and how to best move forward. But first, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Underdog Fantasy, who has continued their $500 special for new signups. That's right. Not only are they the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports, but any new customer who signs up using code HBTC or the sign up link in the description will get a 100% deposit match up to $500, which is normally a match up to $100. So you definitely want to take advantage of this deal while it's still going. On top of that, they have different pick'em specials in the lobby for you when you sign up, and these specials are always easy W's to help you win up to 20x on your money. And what I've been doing every week is picking higher or lower on 2 to 5 key players between the Chiefs and whoever they are playing next, and it's been a blast. They also have a lot of tournaments that you can play in every single week, winning various prizes, and most of them are super easy to play, only take 3 to 6 minutes process to complete and again, give out quite a bit in prizes. So make sure to head on over to the Underdog website or app. Both are super easy to navigate, and use code HBTC at sign up to get your first deposit of up to $500 matched plus a pick'em special in the lobby. Next up, a few hours before the trade deadline ended yesterday, the Chiefs made a very quiet move that kind of went under the radar and certainly wouldn't have wowed the crowd anyway because it wasn't for a wide receiver. It also wasn't even a trade, just a move they made on the day of the deadline to help out a position group struggling through injuries and lacking solid depth because of it. And that was for a linebacker, which is something I said in a recent live stream to be on the lookout for, even over a wide receiver trade, because the Chiefs still have a plethora of wide receiver depth. You can say what you want about them, but there's a lot of guys over there. Meanwhile, they are really struggling in the linebacker room. You want to talk about a trade before the trade deadline? They need to trade for a linebacker. I know y'all want a receiver. They got freaking receivers, dude. I understand they're not the best, but dude, if you don't have Willie Gay for a while, Nick Bolton, and Drew Tranquil's banged up. So yeah, Nick Bolton recently underwent surgery on his wrist and was placed on IR last weekend. Willie Gay injured his tailbone and lower back in the Broncos game, left the game, didn't return, then also didn't practice today. Linebacker Drew Tranquil was shaken up on a play in the Broncos game as well and had to leave the field for at least a couple of plays. And I think it was Cam Jones and Jack Cochran out there at one point, which isn't ideal. Of course, the Chiefs still have Leo Chanel, but linebacker Cole Christiansen was also placed on the practice squad injured list due to a hamstring injury back on October 17th. And while Drew did finish the game on Sunday and is okay from what I understand, they've still taken several hits in that room, which is why on Monday it was believed that the Chiefs tried to sign a familiar face in linebacker Ben Niemann off the Broncos practice squad, and the Broncos said, no thank you, and instead promoted him to the 53-man roster. And many around the kingdom, honestly, were thankful the Broncos did that, not wanting to see Niemann back ever again anyway. So that brings us to Tuesday, a few hours before the trade deadline ended, when Matt Derrick announced that the Chiefs signed linebacker Darius Harris to their roster from the Raiders practice squad. They also released another linebacker, Isaiah Moore, from the practice squad with an injury designation. So yeah, it's safe to say they need linebacker depth badly, and the Darius Harris signing is a great pickup because Harris not only played 311 defensive snaps last year, most of it was in the beginning of the season during Willie Gay's suspension before having a more limited role upon Willie's return, but Harris also played 178 special team snaps, which was the 10th most on the team. Andy Reid said today that Harris is a good football player who can help on special teams, and he knows the defense. He's actually played all three linebacker positions, and therefore, this is a quality signing, in my opinion, albeit not a flashy, shocking one like a wide receiver. And that signing now brings the Chiefs' active roster up to 52, with one still remaining due to Justin Ross being removed from the roster and placed on the commissioner's exempt list. So, what will they do to fill that last spot? Well, since the Chiefs didn't trade for anyone before the deadline, maybe Richie James returns and fills it, though it was reported he was being shopped to potentially be traded away from the team, per Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, to which nothing materialized before the deadline. But Andy Reid noted today in his presser that Richie's 21-day return window opened up, so he's back at practice and, quote, we'll just see how that goes. And that means for now that Richie James still won't take up a roster spot until he's designated to return within these 21 days. And if he doesn't, I think he goes to IR for the rest of the season, so he should be back. Pete Sweeney noted that he looked good out there at practice today, as did Darius Harris. And while I know some Chiefs fans are sad they didn't trade for a wide receiver, I'm not really surprised for a couple of reasons. First, they already traded for a wide receiver, Mecole Hardman, a week ago. Maybe it wasn't the wide receiver you wanted, but they did go and get one. Then they only have 5 draft picks for next year and currently only like $3.2 million in cap space after the Mecole Hardman trade. And that means the Chiefs are rolling with the wide receivers they have: Rashee Rice, Skyy Moore, MVS, Kadarius Toney, Mecole Hardman, and Justin Watson. Meanwhile, Richie James is looking at returning soon, and then Justin Ross is still over there in limbo on the exempt list. And whether you love it or you hate it, it is what it is, and there you have it. And regarding the loss to the Broncos, Andy Reid said today during his presser that it's not just a wide receiver thing, it's, quote, all of us, meaning the entire offense. A week ago, they were saying how good they did when they beat the Chargers by 2 scores. So we got to just keep the consistency going week in and week out on the offensive side. You got to work through it, and that's what we're doing. He said it was an unusual thing to have all those turnovers that they did, and honestly, had it not been for all those turnovers, I personally think the Chiefs would have won that game. The team got embarrassed We all know it, they all know it, and they felt it. Skyy Moore said they all feel like they aren't their usual selves, working through it all with the goal of getting quickly back on track. They know they are a good football team, just got to correct the small details and keep it moving. Travis Kelce spoke today about the loss on the New Heights podcast, saying he was effing embarrassed. The defense is playing their tails off, and it's getting real one-sided with the defense having to step up time and time again.
I don't think I've been in a situation where we've stalled this much as an offense throughout the year, and definitely at this point in the season.
Kelce then said they got a lot of guys that usually figure out how to get this thing going by now, but it's getting frustrating.
Not putting up touchdowns week after week after week it's getting old.
Travis then goes on to say they are all out there feeling the urgency, knowing things haven't been up to the standard from the past, especially knowing they got the best offensive mind in the game in Andy Reid and the best quarterback out there, and therefore it's unacceptable. And he knows they've been letting the kingdom down, as well as the defense who keeps carrying the team. The pass catchers got to clean up their blocks, run correct routes, and catch the ball. Kelce, of course, said he himself is included in that critique.
But it's a challenge at this point in the season to get this thing right now before it gets out of control and it gets really bad.
I do also want to note that Kelce isn't panicking, saying these things are indeed correctable when looking at the film, and he believes they can still right the ship.
But I think that when you watch the film, everything's correctable on our side. It's not that we don't have the guys or we don't have the scheme. The right plays are being called, and guys just have to execute.
Everybody is there in the building accepting accountability for this loss and looking at ways to improve and get better. First and foremost, wanting to secure and protect the football. And speaking of securing the football, Andy Reid said Skyy's missed catch at the end of the game was due to his arm being yanked, which makes it hard to catch the ball one-handed. He took a lot of heat for that, but for the most part, Skyy is doing a heck of a job for the team, with Andy ending that bit by saying Skyy's just got to keep growing. Well, I get that Andy is the nice guy on the mic, but dude, he's got to catch that freaking ball. The arm was barely tugged, honestly, and Skyy was tracking the ball, adjusting his route accordingly, and while he may have lost it at the last second, he still raised his hands up knowing the ball was coming, and it bounced right off of his freaking arm. Skyy himself did admit he got grabbed, but, quote, "You get grabbed every play, so I'm expected to make that catch. I know that, but it's on to the next play." Well, that's what you said the last time, Skyy. On to the next play, and that's fine. You can't get hung up on it, but the team is counting on you to step up, so this man either needs to do exactly that or have a seat, because even though Andy Reid said Skyy is doing well out there, I'm not so sure. He currently has the third most routes ran on the offense, only behind Kelce and MVS so far, and he's been targeted 27 times, catching 14 passes for 168 yards and 1 touchdown, and that makes for a season-long projection of 30 catches for 357 yards and 2 TDs. That is only 100 more receiving yards than his rookie season, and that is unacceptable. And out of all the pass catchers on the team, Skyy has the third most targets, but the 7th most receptions. He's also 6th in receiving yards, 10th in yards after the catch per reception, and Mahomes has the lowest passer rating when targeting Skyy over anybody else outside of 2 people, Richie James, who's been on IR, and McCole Hardman, who just freaking got here. In conclusion, when you run the third most routes on the team, yet in 6 out of 8 games have had less than 23 receiving yards and are averaging under 2 catches for 21 yards a game, it's an issue and something that needs to be addressed, whether it's a trust factor with Mahomes, not getting open, a bit of both, the play calling. I don't know. I don't care. It's got to get fixed. Skyy himself admitted he's never been satisfied with his performance so far this season. There's more he can get from the opportunities given, and he's just looking to build on that from here on out. Well, let's all hope that's exactly what happens moving forward, not just for Skyy, but for the rest of the wide receiver room, as well as the entire offense. And with all that being said, how do you guys currently feel about the Chiefs right now at this point in time? Sure, the offense needs to get some things figured out, but they are still the most rounded team of the Mahomes era, all things considered, are the 1 seed in the AFC, and the defense is playing out of their minds. So, do you think the wide receiver room is such an issue that the Chiefs can't continue winning games? And if the issue is so glaring, then why didn't the Chiefs do more to address it other than trade for McCole Hardman? And if I'm not asking enough of you already, let me know your thoughts on what receivers should be getting more snaps and which you think should be getting less. Let me know your thoughts on all that in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?